Welcome to HR TV. This is Mahmoud Mansi. We're now in Dubai live in the HR Summit and Expo, and we are pleased to welcome James, the country manager of Cubiks.
Lovely to see you. Thanks for having me.
Very interesting name. Can you tell us more about Cubiks and what do you do? I'm sorry, but James has 17 years of experience in talent assessment and 10 years experience in the Gulf region. So we're gonna benefit so much from you today.
All right, thank you. Yeah, Cubiks has been around for the last 17 or 20 years, headquartered in the UK, and we're now delivering talent assessments all over the world. I think last year we delivered 2 million assessments in 78 different countries. My focus is on the Middle East in general.
So do you believe that assessments in the Middle East, since you have 10 years in the Middle East, assessment in the Middle East is different than assessments in Europe, for example, or in any other region?
I mean, I think the best practices still apply in terms of needing to make sure that your assessments ultimately are predicting the performance of people. But the context, of course, changes. The culture here is different. The values that people are looking for, the competencies and personality preferences are different. So it's very important to follow those best practices which are global, but adapt the processes so that they're relevant for the region.
That's very interesting. I find the word predicting very interesting because usually from what I know is assessments usually assess the current situation, the current person. Is this true?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it does depend on the context. I think a critical part of most of what we do is called predictive validity. And what that means is if you, for example, are going to hire someone into a new role or promote someone into a different role, sure, you're interested in what they've done and what they can do now, but you're also interested in, are they going to be the right cultural fit for that role in the future? Are they going to bring the right competencies and behaviors in the future, or the ability to solve complex problems? So that's what we're really focused on, and has, since we were created, has been a key focus of our work.
Well, from the perspective of the person who is being assessed, we're used to like classroom assessments or filling papers, filling boxes. Do you do it in this way, or do you have a different approach? Can you share with us?
Yeah, I mean, we can do it in that way.
There's a Cubic way.
But very, very rarely now. What we try and do, I think historically, sure, you were in a classroom, you would tick boxes and answer questions on a piece of paper. And the focus historically was all about predictive validity. So sometimes the candidate experience was quite laborious. You might be sitting there for an hour and a half answering questions. You'd also find that the hiring manager's experience was also tedious and inaccessible. So you'd get a 58-page report that frankly you're probably not going to read. So what we're trying to do is keep the predictive validity so that we are providing recommendations that are useful, but at the same time improve that experience, make it much more engaging and fun. Maybe you can learn a bit about the organization, perhaps watch a short video. Maybe you could be immersed in a virtual environment and tested that way. So it's going to be shorter for you, more fun for you, more a better opportunity to learn about the organization for you as a candidate. And then for the hiring manager, depending on what they need, they'll just get a snapshot report, a dashboard saying, this is how the candidate has done. Here are a couple of interview questions, suggestions before you go into the interview. So we're trying to keep up with the time, embrace the new technologies that are out there in order to make that experience more engaging for you and more useful for the hiring manager.
I believe that's a very interesting approach because the fun part, usually when someone is enjoying something or comfortable doing something, the stress levels are below.
Yeah.
So it would be actually more accurate, the results.
Yeah, I think you're right. And also we're finding now, globally for sure, and increasingly in the region, there's been a bit of a power shift. So historically you would have a nervous candidate who would come and do an assessment, and then the organisation will pick from the candidates. that power is now moving a little bit back towards the candidates. So now you might find like a social media style assessment or a chatbot on a careers website, where it's not the organization looking at the individual, but rather the individual looking at the organization. We've just launched a tool called Cubiks Capture, where you're flicking through pictures and short statements and aligning yourself with different values, saying, yeah, this is really important for me, or perhaps less so for this one. And it's what we call a self-assessment. So at the end, I will get a score saying this is your percentage fit with an organization, and these are the values that you consider important, and these are the kinds of roles you could apply for. And it's up to me. I either apply for that role, or I go and find somewhere else where perhaps I'm a better fit. So yeah, more engaging and also more power to the candidate.
Well, from the organization's perspective, and from your experience here, do you believe that all organizations are open to the assessment, or some are still not applying that, some are still not understanding the importance of assessing their people?
I think that
the challenges you face with the clients.
Yeah, I think largely people have bought into the idea of assessments now. Certainly the more developed organizations, the larger organizations, globally, the vast majority of Fortune 500 organizations in the US use assessments to a great extent. And yeah, locally, I think it's still important to get the opinions of future line managers, hiring managers, and HR around people. But people really do understand the benefits of objective assessment. There are so many biases in the old school interview process, so many efficiencies that you lose that can be brought in by assessments. So no, I think now normally the conversation is not about whether an organization should use assessment or not. It's more about which assessment is the best fit for what they need.
Excellent. For the culture as well of the organization, what fits it best? So you do also assess leaders.
Yeah.
Exactly. So from your experience and from the results you have seen through all those years, what advice would you provide to leaders? As now you might have now in your mind right now, you know what are the strengths, common weaknesses.
Yeah.
So what is the common weaknesses that leaders need to develop further, or points of development?
It's an interesting question. We've seen.
We all need to develop ourselves.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
if you can highlight this for us, please.
Yeah, I think there's been a change in recent years, and something that's going to continue growing over the next few years. Historically, in the region, talent would be hired in at a very senior level, often expats from abroad, and they would come in at the pinnacle of their career, and they would try to mold that organization. Now the level of education is really quite advanced in the region. There's a bubble of youth, so it's time to really step away from hiring in people at a senior level from abroad and looking internally at our youth and looking at, well, how do we identify the potential within that group, and how are we going to develop those so that they can move up within the organization rather than having to bring in from outside all the time.
That's a very humanitarian thought, and an HR thought, because HR actually now, many people, professionals from HR, they start thinking in that way, how to develop their people internally and create a career development plan for them.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing a lot more demand in the last 1 or 2 years than we have previously, for sure.
Well, do you have a certain a cubic way? You know, for example, if I'm a client, if I'm an organization, and there are many choices in front of me, and of course, each choice has their own benefits.
Yeah.
So, can you highlight? You spoke about lots of benefits.
Yeah.
Can you highlight further benefits if I'm gonna work with Cubic?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you mentioned earlier, sitting on our stand, People Matter stands out, and it really does. It embodies everything that we do. We set out to empower people to achieve their potential, and that's through our assessments. So I suppose we have the science. We need to make sure that our recommendations are robust and valid, but we're really focusing on innovation. say about 20% of our organization now is in IT, technology, innovation, R&D. So we're investing a huge amount on innovation to make that process more efficient, more useful for candidates and employees. Personalized solutions is our final focus. So we want to make it relevant for the employer, but everyone who is touched by our assessments, we want them to benefit in some way. So rather than that old terrifying exam where maybe you don't ever hear your results, now it's going to be a useful experience for everyone. So those three things: science, innovation, and personalization.
That's amazing. And organizations as well, who already believe in assessment, sometimes they don't know, is there a certain timing as an organization should assess people, like every 3 years, every 5 years, every 2 years? And upon that, how do I decide the number of years that I need to assess my people?
Yeah, okay. I mean, it really depends on the type of assessment you're doing. On the whole, every 1 to 2 years, you should review assessment results. There's no point in assessing people for assessment's sake. There has to be a reason why. Maybe you're tracking their development, maybe you're putting people through a succession plan, maybe you're just hiring them, in which case it's a little bit of a one-off.
Yeah, it's a different
But
case,
the result of the assessment should be able to inform decisions for certainly a year in most cases. After 1 to 2 years, you should probably start looking at reassessing them if you need to make a decision about their career.
Okay, let's assume I'm an individual. The organization I'm in right now, they don't do assessment, but I want, as an individual, to develop myself.
Yeah.
So there is room for me with Cubic as well. You do assessments for individuals?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of our work is business to business, so it'll be an HR department that comes to us. But yeah, sure. I mean, if people want to go through our personality and preference inventory and get a report to give them some development tips and even get some follow-up coaching, then absolutely that's something we can do, and we'd love to hear from people.
Amazing. James Raley, thank you so much for this interview and for sharing your insights with us.
Lovely to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.